Okay, everybody, this is Tim Blankenship, and this is not Divorce Master Radio. However, we're just using the loop for Divorce Master Radio for our podcast, and we're just using that until we get a proper audio loop for our live broadcasts. So this is Tim Blankenship, and today we're talking about the process of filing for divorce, and this is our second live broadcast. Just as a reminder, if you have questions, we are filming this live. We are on the air right now. It's 1:01 p.m. Pacific time. The way to get a hold of us, if you have questions, we did put this out on Facebook, and we did do a little bit of marketing. I'm going to change this over to me here real quick. We did do a little bit of marketing on Facebook. We put out a Facebook event, and we publicized that locally for the first time, because this is only our first event, or second event rather, and we're still working out some of the bugs of how to live stream these events and get used to the software. And we're also experiencing a bit of a video delay we noticed between the audio. So if you're watching this, we thought it would render different, but the first video broadcast we did, if you look at it now even on YouTube, there's still a 2-second or so delay between the audio and the video. So we're working on figuring out what's causing that, but we didn't want to delay. As you can see in the background here, we are now in our private video studio that we got. We have a separate office now. This is our third office, and it's solely for the purpose of video, and we're still waiting for the furniture to arrive. So we just have a setup here temporarily. As you can see, the room is mostly empty except for the side of the room that I'm on. But eventually behind me, what you'll see when we do these live broadcasts is it'll be more of a high countertop stool with a professional background, and we'll probably be doing some interviews as well moving forward in the next couple of weeks as soon as we get the entire office set up. But without delay, we wanted to continue with our Thursday broadcast at 1 p.m. talking about divorce. And to get a hold of us right now, we'll eventually have a phone number where you can call in. But right now we are asking if you have a question pertaining to what we're talking about today, or a question we can answer about divorce in general. As long as it's not real, doesn't lend itself to legal advice, we'll probably be okay. But the processes and procedures and so forth. Today we're talking about the process of filing for divorce in California. When we get calls, and we get calls all the time that are asking some frequently asked questions, we call them. That was our first broadcast last Thursday. But in this one, we're going to talk exactly about some of the specifics of filing for divorce in California, as far as the paperwork, the process, and the procedure. So if you're going to ask questions, and I just skipped right over this, go ahead and on Twitter, you can type in your question. Just use the hashtag of divorce661. So hashtag divorce661. I do have Twitter open, so if you do ask a question, we're updating that. I'll get the question, I'll be able to answer it. Other than that, we'll be discussing the divorce process. I have some slides set up for you as well. Okay. So first thing I'd like to do at the beginning is get this information out to folks. I want to talk to you a little bit more about who we are, what we do, what we're about. So let's get into that first, and then we'll get into the slides regarding the process of filing for divorce in California. So we are legal document assistants. We're a licensed and bonded legal document preparation firm. We specialize only in divorce in California. And we are basically that alternative to an attorney. Now, we can do everything an attorney can do except for give legal advice. We have all the forms, we have all the court process procedures, everything the attorneys and the courts have, we have access to, and we'll provide the same full service process that you would if you had an attorney, which means we fill out all the forms, we complete the documents for you, we will go down to court, file the documents, serve the documents, and continue, take care of your entire divorce case from start to finish, including all arrangements. So we're talking working on your financial disclosures, working on any custody agreements, custody visitation, We'll do all the financial disclosures, your income and expense, schedule of assets and debts. We'll be getting into that in this. What we break down is to a 3-step process in the divorce. We complete all your final agreements. So we're talking about custody, visitation, child support, spouse support, distribution of assets and debts, pensions, 401ks, you name it. All of that is combined and wrapped in to your final agreement. Basically what we do is we'll run you through the entire process. You won't need to work with any other third-party service unless you can't come to an agreement for some reason, and it does happen once in a while. You may need some paid professional mediation, but a large portion of our clients, probably 99% of them, get through without having to get any additional outside assistance. And again, we do help with clients all throughout California. So let's go to the first slide here, process of filing for divorce. Basically what we've done is we have turned this into 3 main steps. When people call us, if we were to explain the entire process to you in one shot, or we made you do everything in one shot, you'd hang up the phone on us and you would hate us forever. If we hadn't broken the process down into 3 steps, it wouldn't make sense. A lot of people think they have to have all their agreements, everything figured out. Regarding their divorce, they think they have to have everything figured out as far as custody, child support, property, and all that, and that's not the case. There are steps to this, and there's reasons we follow this process and these specific steps because it makes a lot of sense. So let's take a look at these 3 steps that we are going to talk about, and then we're going to talk about them a little bit more in detail. Okay, so we broke them down into 3 steps, as I mentioned. We're talking about step 1 here, which is to file and serve your initial divorce papers, okay? So initially, there's only a few documents that are needed to file for divorce, and we'll get into the specifics of those. But there's only 3, and if you have children, 4 documents that you need to file for divorce to get the process started. The courts do not make you turn in, nor can you turn in all of your documentation in one shot. There's a process. You have to file and complete your documents. You complete them and then file them, and then they have to be served on the other party. That is kind of what we wrap into step 1. Once that's done, you can move into step 2. Step 2 is preparing your financial disclosures. This step, the courts require both parties to complete financial disclosures. They want you to tell the other party, so you're going to tell your spouse, this is what we know to be this is what I know to be the financial aspect of our estate. This is what we have as far as property is concerned. This is what I know our assets to be. And you have to also do a financial statement as far as how much money you make and things of that nature. So you're putting everything out on the table, disclosing your finances as you know it to the other party. And your spouse will also have to do the same thing. I'm just seeing if we have any questions coming in on Twitter. Not yet. So both of you will have to do that. The reason is, if you have a spouse who maybe was stay at home the whole time and not familiar of the assets and debts, or maybe the pension information or things of that nature, or maybe doesn't know exactly what the working spouse makes. That's why this is important. Maybe one spouse pays all the bills. We see that quite a bit. They earned the income, they paid all the bills, and the other spouse who didn't do that isn't real familiar with what they have in the bank, what they have for savings, what they have for debt. So that's why this financial disclosure process is important. And then once both parties have done that with their financial disclosures, the next step is to prepare your final agreements. This is known as the judgment. It's known as, you may have heard of it as a marital settlement agreement. You may have heard of it referred to as a judgment. There's 3 words: judgment, marital settlement agreement, and just agreement. So that's your final order. And this judgment, if you will, has everything included in there that we talked about before. Your property, who's getting it, the debts, who's getting it, dividing how you're going to divide up, credit cards and assets, who's getting the house, who's getting what car, who's getting what accounts. All that needs to be dealt with, including your children. Custody and visitation plan, as well as child support, if any, and spouse support, if any. And these are all things that we will help you with Again, we have the software to help determine child support and spouse support information, so we can help you work through all of that. So 3 steps. First, you file and serve your documents, prepare, file, and serve. Next, you're preparing your financial disclosures, and those also need to be served. And then you're preparing your final agreements, and that goes on the judgment, and that would then later be signed by both of you and signed by the judge, and then that will be entered into, the judge will then sign it, and that'll be your final agreement. So now we're going to talk specifically about each of these steps because there's obviously a lot more detail that goes into this. The first thing we have is, of course, step 1, the initial documents. Okay, we're talking, and these are what they are. If you want to jot these down, these are the documents you're going to need. The summons, a petition, a UCCJEA. I skipped the family law case cover sheet only because that is called by a different name in many courts, and some courts don't have that form at all. But summons and petition is certainly what you're going to have, and because we handle all of California, the courts have some local forms. And in Los Angeles County, where we're located, it's called a family law case cover sheet. It's a jurisdictional form. They want to know where you live to make sure you're filing in the right court. Now, other courts in other counties, they have the same form, but it's called by a different name. Sometimes it's referred to as some type of jurisdictional form. They want, again, just know where you live to make sure they have the jurisdiction to make orders over your divorce. And to do so, there's certain rules. You have to live in the county for 3 months and live in the state for 6. So there are some rules as where you're living, but usually that's not even verified. But they just want to make sure you're living there so you can file in the right court. So again, initial steps, summons, petition. The UCCJA, that's regarding children. If you have children, you'll need that extra form. And basically they want to know where the kids have lived, where they're currently living. And again, it's for jurisdictional purposes, who they're living with, where you lived. And they want a 5-year history on that. Now, these are the only forms that you need to file your divorce case. As I was saying in the beginning of this, you don't need to have all your agreements, although it's fine if you do have all your agreements figured out. You can, but it's not going to come into play initially. You cannot complete steps 1 through 3 and turn in all your paperwork because there's an actual process for that. And that process with step 1 is filling out the summons, the petition, case cover sheet, and the jurisdictional form regarding your children, getting that prepared, filed, and then served on your spouse. And it's important that you do it in that order. You don't prepare it and then serve it. We see that all the time. People who are trying to complete their own divorce, they get the steps backwards, and they'll fill out the forms and they'll serve them, and then they'll file them. And the proof of service has a date prior to the date it was filed, and you won't know, and the court won't say anything until you turn in all your paperwork at the end, maybe 6 months down the road, that they tell you you did this incorrect, and guess what? You have to start all over on as far as the service date. And the reason that's important, the date of service, is because the date of service is when the 6-month clock starts. If you're not aware, California has a 6-month cooling off period, which means the court, the soonest you can get divorced is 6 months after the other party served. So that's why we're saying do it in this order, because if you prepare all the documentation and you take months getting that all done, but you never served the initial divorce documents, the clock hasn't even started ticking on when your divorce can be finalized. And that wraps up step 1. As with our business, this is the first thing you'll do when you meet with us, when you come in, either in our office, or if we do this over the phone or via email with you, because we do have clients all across California. This is the very first thing that we will be filling out for you on your behalf. And we are a full service divorce company, as I mentioned, so these aren't forms that you'll fill out. We'll fill these out for you. Either we'll have a phone conversation and we'll fill them out over the phone with you, or some people prefer us to send them a short questionnaire, 1-page questionnaire that will allow you to enter your information by hand. You can fax it or email it back to us, and then we'll plug the information you provide us into the correct form so we can get that filed with the court. And just a note to those folks that aren't local to us, again, we do have clients all throughout California. being that we're full service, we still will take them to court for you and file them. We have a relationship with all the courts where we will file your documents by mail, and it's totally acceptable practice in California. Step 2, completing your financial disclosures. And I'll be honest with you, this is where people kind of put on the brakes a little bit. They kind of slow down on completing these. And if we gave you these financial disclosure documents to complete before or as a condition of coming in to start your divorce, the people that have filed for divorce would probably be a lot less, because no one really likes dealing with the financial disclosures. It's either because it's a wake-up call to their financial status. They realize how much debt they're in or how much money they don't have. It's not a fun process, but it is a necessary evil to get done. So we don't require that the financial disclosures be completed prior to filing the divorce case. The court's rules do say you have 60 days after you've filed your initial paperwork to get that done. And I would call it a soft rule. I hope the courts aren't watching this, because it's not something where at 60 days automatically, the case is dropped or something. It's if you are going through your case and you can get them done in 60 days, that's great. We routinely will get them done, probably 30 days after your case is initially filed, because we just want to move you through the process. But if it takes you longer, it's fine. If that 60-day rule there is if you are trying to get through your case and make you can get, again, we will fill these out for you. In this case, what we normally will do is we will give you the forms themselves, the actual court forms. We'll sit down and explain to you what we need. Because in this case, we don't know what your assets and debts are. We don't know what your credit cards and vehicle information is. So we need you to write that information down, either in an email or write on the court documents. You can provide that to us. We will ultimately type them up for you, but we will give you a printout of the actual court documents explaining the type of information that we need, specifically as far as property is concerned. And then we'll be typing that up for you and then ask you any questions if you're missing information. For the schedule of assets and debts, just so we can be very detailed in this video, that the information you need to provide for that, I will go over briefly, and I can pretty much do this off the top of my head. If you have a home, you need to list the property address, and you're also going to need a copy of the deed. And when I say the deed, all you need is the exhibit page that shows the legal description. You will have to use that legal description when you provide your judgment to the court. They're going to want the legal description, not just the address. Any other assets or debts like vehicles, credit cards, you need to identify them properly. So when the judge signs it and you have this order, both you, the court, and your spouse know what that item is. So if there's ever a dispute, it can be brought up. For instance, if you have a vehicle, they want to know the year, make, model, and license plate, or VIN. If it's a boat, you can use the hull number. I think it's called a CF number. Somehow you need to identify what that item is with sufficient, information. Credit cards, you need to have the name of the bank and the last 4 digits of the account. We don't recommend you put the full 16 digits down just for security purposes. If you have bank accounts, again, same thing, name of the bank, last 4 digits of the account is enough to identify it. Pensions, name of the pension, the account number. We note that sometimes pensions won't have account numbers, so what we'll do is just use the person's whose pension's name it is. We'll use the last 4 digits of their social security number to identify it. So that's pretty much how you're going to want to identify a property on the schedule of assets and debts. The next thing you're going to fill out, I skipped the income and expense declaration. Okay, so let's go back to that. Income and expense declaration is one of the other documents you're going to need to complete. And this is basically the other half of the coin when it comes to financial disclosure. Schedule of assets and debts is exactly that, assets and debts. Income and expense is your income and your expenses. On the income and expense, it's basically going to ask you where you work, how much you make, how long you've been there, when you last filed taxes, and how much you think the other party makes. Page 2 talks about some of your other income sources, how much you made last month and your average monthly income if you're self-employed, and if you're getting money from any other sources. If you have a business and you're a self-employed Schedule C employee, you need to attach a copy of your Schedule C. If you are a W-2 employee, you need to attach 2 months pay stubs to your income and expense declaration. It says that right on page 1. There's a little box in the upper third on the left. A lot of people miss it, but you do need to have 2 months of your income, of your W-2s, your pay stubs rather, because that's part of the disclosure process, letting your spouse know what your income is, and that would be used for purposes of determining spouse support and child support down the road. Then on your expense sheet on page 3 of the income and expense, you're going to list how much your rent or mortgage is, and then kind of a summary of your expenses, credit card payments, car payments, how much for gas, utilities, and so on and so forth, and you're just going to go through that. Page 4 is if you have children on the income and expense, they want to know what percentage of time they're with, the children are with each of you. Okay, when you do your income and expense, your schedule of assets and debts, we're kind of jumping back again, and I apologize, I'm about to sneeze. But when you have your schedule of assets and debts, you're supposed to include copies of statements of all of these things. So if you have a credit card and you listed Bank of America account number 1234, and you indicate that there's maybe $10,000 debt, you should give a most recent statement as an attachment to the schedule of assets and debts, because this is basically saying, here's what I'm disclosing, and here's the amount of the debt, and here's a statement showing that this is how much the debt is. And that's important not only for debts, but for assets as well. If you're going to list a pension and or a 401k, which actually has a balance, you want to have a copy of that statement so you can show the other spouse, here's one of our assets, and here's how much is in there, and here's the most recent statement to show exactly the balance of that account. And again, this all goes back to disclosure. Now, when it comes to financial disclosures, if you're going through an uncontested case, meaning you're not going to court, you're not, which you don't have to if you're in agreement on things, these financial disclosures, you're going to serve them, prepare them, and serve them, but you're not going to file them. Okay, you don't need to file any financial information with the court. This is just disclosure for your spouse. You're going to have either mail them or have someone else mail them or have them personally served to your spouse, and then you're going to file a declaration that says you completed that step. So you're basically on your honor that you did that. So do not file the income and expense declaration or the schedule of assets and debts. Those are only to be served on the other party, and then you file a declaration with the court that certifies that you completed that step, and both of you would need to do that. Now, if you're going to go to court and you're having issues and you need to have a hearing and it's financially related, then the income and expense will need to be filed. And of course, if you guys are fighting over property, you're going to eventually have probably some discovery and listing assets and debts specifically. But in uncontested cases that we handle each and every day, the financial disclosures never go down to the court. And the fact that the courts don't even care what your property is on those documents, if you're going to come to a written agreement, they're not going to even see the values of those assets and debts. And just keep that in mind. If you're going to come to an agreement, the values of assets and debts don't go on the judgment. All they're going to see on the judgment is that you're getting account 1234, and that's it. They don't know if there's $1 or $1 million in that account. Okay, let's go to our last slide. Step 3, completing the judgment. If there is any part of the paperwork that is going to give you trouble, this is going to be it. The judgment is going to be the most lengthy and confusing and difficult part. And this is particularly for people, if you're trying to do this yourself, this is where we get a lot of calls. Maybe they were able to file their initial forms and do some of that part right. Maybe they didn't, but this is where we get a lot of calls of people trying to self-prepare their divorce. They really get stuck and they're calling for help around this area. Again, it's the most difficult part. It includes all the agreements, all agreements related to distribution of assets and debts, child custody, child visitation, child support, spouse support, and any other orders. When it comes to uncontested divorce cases or amicable style divorce cases, sky's the limit for the most part as far as what you want to agree to. If you want to have spouse support, if both of you are in agreement that there's going to be spousal support, then there can be spousal support. If you guys say no, we don't want it, that's fine too. You guys can distribute the property any way you see fit. in an uncontested case. The courts will not get involved. You won't even have a court date. In fact, the courts don't even want to see you. They want you to get through your case on your own. However you decide to divide up your property, your assets, your debts, the courts will not get involved. That's why they don't ask, in uncontested cases, they don't see the values of your assets. Again, it's going to be Bank of America 1, 2, 3, 4 to one spouse, and if there's a disparity in the amount of time that you have your children. So let me just check one last time and see if we have any other any questions that came in. No, we do not. Hopefully, we had a few people call in. I hope there's some people watching. Next week, we will, again, this is going to be every Thursday at 1 o'clock. We have so much going on in the way of getting information out to folks regarding divorce in California. We have our podcast. It's 5 days a week, on-demand radio. You can go to iTunes. It's at Divorce Master Radio. You can listen to it on your iPad, your iPhone, iPod, iPhone. Yeah. You can listen to that, or you can go right to our website and click on the podcast tab, and you can listen to them right from our website. But like I like to listen to my podcast, and I'll do that on my phone. I'll listen to it on my iPhone, just say walk the dogs and so forth. We also have videos. You can click on the video tab and get pre-recorded videos. We try to talk about just about everything we can that has to do with divorce. And finally, this live broadcast. This is going to be every Thursday, 1 p.m. We're certainly welcome to ideas of what you want to hear about and what you want to talk about. We'll be doing some interviews down the road as soon as we get the office set up. As you can see, it's pretty empty at this point, but we want to make sure we continue getting this information out to everyone. And we're hoping eventually we'll start, as this starts to pick up momentum and we market this idea, that we'll get people calling in, answering questions, and have a real live question and answer scenario, people asking questions about divorce, helping them out. Perhaps they become clients of ours down the road, or else maybe we just help them and they're able to figure out how to complete their case on their own. We do have hundreds of video tutorials. People have actually called me and said, Tim, I just wanted to say thank you. I watched your videos one by one and was able to complete my entire divorce case. Thank you. And that's great. And people will ask me, well, Tim, why would you do that? Doesn't that hurt your business? And what I tell them is, no, these are folks who never were going to use my paid service. Anyways, if they weren't going to get the information from me, they would have got it from somewhere else. And I can guarantee it wouldn't have been as easily attainable to get that information from some other source, even the court websites, because it's hard to understand. We put everything in video format with video tutorials, so it makes it a lot easier to find that information. So again, just to recap, podcast, video podcast coming up soon, videos pre-recorded, live broadcasts every Thursday at 1 o'clock. Make sure you tell your friends, help spread the word for us, get the word out. There's a lot of people that need help with divorce, that don't have the resources to hire an attorney, and they're looking for a more affordable solution. So if you could help us get the word out, we'd highly appreciate it. And if you have any questions, you can always email us, or you can go ahead and call us. Again, we'll give you a free consultation regarding your divorce, talk to you about the specifics in your case, and we'd love to be able to help you get through your divorce anywhere in California. This is Tim Blankenship. We're signing off of this
You've been listening to Tim Blankenship on Divorce Master Radio. Learn more at divorce661.com, where you can find hundreds of video and audio tutorials discussing the California divorce process. Need professional assistance with your divorce?